once you realize what's happening in the world, you need to rethink all aspects of how you live, how much you travel, how you're housed, how big a house you want to live in. Do you need a car? If so, what kind of a car? It also requires some advocacy to the extent that you can do that. Mine is mostly teaching, but political advocacy is also important. I think not doing anything about a problem that is so severe makes you depressed. So every time you do something positive, even if it's a little thing like insulating your attic, it makes you feel better about yourself, a little less part of the problem, and maybe a tiny bit part of a solution. So I think psychologically, financially, and in terms of lifestyle, it's just a great thing to do. And every time I look up at my solar panels, they make me happy. It's as simple as that.
There's clearly a climate crisis, something that if we don't start taking seriously, we're going to regret it. I think we already are. This is, for me, is not something like a casual sort of choice. Someday we might get to this, but this seems to be like, the boat is sinking, and if we don't do something, we're all going to drown, and my kids are going to drown, and their kids are going to drown. So for me, that's really why we made this choice.
We first got solar panels, roof solar panels, in 2014. And I was trying to think whether there was something that prompted that or not. But I think it was when solar panels were getting more talked about and that at that time. And, we just decided it would be a good idea.
We got the solar panels installed in 2019. And we've been very happy with them. The company has a website that chronicles how much energy you're producing every month. And it's a fun website. It also shows you how many trees you would have had to plant to create, that much energy. It's been a lot of fun just seeing that system at work. And then, of course, we got a gigantic tax credit the first year. And then every month you get a little bit of money from the SMART program in Massachusetts.
We purchased the solar panels 7 years ago. So I think the end of 2013 or the end of 2014, I'm sorry, the end of 2014. So we have a 20-year lease on our solar panels, and we get all the electricity that they produce for free. And that's enough to run our house and charge at least one car. And so we can go a full year and not get an electric bill.
It wasn't difficult. They gave us a couple different options. And for whatever reason, we decided to lease the solar panels rather than purchase them for ourselves. But that's a whole other issue. Some people think one's better than the other.
And the advantage of leasing versus owning, again, you don't get any of the tax credits, so it's a bunch of disadvantages. But the advantage is if any equipment breaks, then they're responsible for it. And there's some fairly expensive pieces of equipment. There's something called an inverter, which is a $5,000 piece of equipment. And if that breaks, or if somebody throws a baseball through your panel, as long as it wasn't intentional, that would be covered and they would replace it. So those kinds of things, not having to worry about those repairs. And we did have one failure. We had water got into the pipe where the wires go through to the panels, froze and broke the pipe and broke the wire somehow. So they came out and repaired that. And it was a pretty substantial repair. And again, it didn't cost us anything because
it was leased.
The summer months before I start using air conditioning have been zero bills. And maybe sometimes in the fall is like that. My electricity usage has gone up because I have an electric heat pump now, an electric car that needs charging. I'm actually using more electricity than was originally calculated for with this solar array.
So for several months starting in May, we get a credit, we pay nothing, and then it goes until the end of August roughly. And then our energy bill creeps up again to where it is right now, where you have little sun and, it just makes a little bit of a difference, but it makes a dent.
Throughout the summers, you build up credits. Then in the winter, you produce less electricity and you eat away at that credit. And the goal for us is to not get so that we have to pay them money. And we've had them 6 or 7 years. And I think maybe 2 or 3 of the years we've had to pay a little bit in February or March, small electric bills. We haven't quite made it through the year. And then recently we've made it through the year, a couple of years in a row now where we haven't had to pay anything.
Installation of the system has to be in the basement, which is at the other end of the house from where the solar panels are. So the question was, how do we get from here to here? And they solved it. I mean, they were creative, committed to what they were doing. So we were quite happy. There were no extra costs. It was exactly as promised. So the rafters on the side of the roof where the solar panels went had to be reinforced. So before they put the panels up, they had to come in and put up additional supports.
We negotiated up front and said, we know we need a new roof within 5 years, and we negotiated a guaranteed flat fee for the company to come take the panels off. We had the roof replaced just less than a year ago, this past spring, and then put them back on. Glen has an app that he can check on his phone and actually see that it's one time you knew there was a problem because he just every once in a while, I wonder how much electricity we're making today. And he'll check his phone and he was like, nothing. Why isn't the meter spinning? And that's how we knew we had a problem.
Yeah,
solar panels mean that they rely on the sunshine. And so when it's cloudy, no, we don't have that. They're not producing anything. And when there's snow on top, the sun comes out, the snow comes off very easily. It just, because the panels are black and smooth, the snow just slides off.
If you bought it outright, we would have got a tax credit, and then you get an annual. There's some kind of fee for annually for being an electric producer. So we don't get that as well, but we got the lower price. For us, the break even was about 7 years, so we're just about there right now, based on the cost of electricity. We've paid for the panels, the 20-year lease at the 7th year. So the next 13 years, for all intents and purposes, we are getting free electricity. How advantageous it is.
How easy it is,
Yeah.
what a good option it is, not to be afraid to do it. And yeah, the more it's again a domino thing, the more people you see with them on their house, the less. At first people were like, oh, I think that'll look ugly. I don't know if my house would sell. And now I'm certain that it would add to the value of the house, not detract at all.
Right.
Yeah.
With regard to the solar panels, was hesitant at the beginning and now recognize what a great decision it was. It really has paid off.
Decided to get an electric vehicle because my regular trusty old gasoline running low mileage car was old and got to the point where it really wasn't worth to get fixed anymore. So I was at what's called a transition point. The general advice is when you're at a transition point, when you need to change, when you need to get something new anyway, then go for the electric thing, whether it's for your house or your car.
We actually have 2 electric cars. Both of them are plug-in electric hybrids. After you look at rebates and everything, the plug-in hybrids were actually cheaper than comparable gasoline vehicles. My Volt was a $20,000 car, and her Prius was a couple of $1,000s less than a regular Prius would have been because of rebates
The rebates.
and sales.
The Nissan Leaf had an incentive. Massachusetts offers a $2,500 mail-in rebate, and the federal government offers $7,500 in tax credit. But only for new cars and only for certain new electric cars. So it's only for cars that sell under an X amount. So literally, I got a brand new car for $18,000.
The fact that it uses electricity and the fact that we had solar panels and we could basically run the vehicle from electricity produced off the house was very attractive. And the Tesla, to be clear, we actually bought used. We didn't buy it new. So the price had come down a bit where it was in an affordable range.
It's also a very, very nice car to drive. It's a very comfortable car to drive, and it means that about 95 to 98% of the miles that we drive are all electric. And I can say that electric vehicles are really pleasant to drive. Got very good takeoff, very smooth ride.
It's actually pleasant to drive an electric car. It's very smooth, it's very quiet. It's peppy, I think, enough. And it's, yeah, I like it. I like it. I can feel the difference when this car, when I do go on a long trip and I use up the battery, once in a while that happens, and it goes on to gas, you tell the difference right away because it's louder. It just feels more clunky, actually.
Tesla is incredible to drive. It's extremely smooth and very comfortable to drive in. It's very, very good in rain and in snow, which you'd be surprised, but it's a very heavy car because of all the batteries, and that makes it stable.
Love to drive them. I didn't anticipate all that. I thought, oh, I'll feel good about using an electric vehicle for the environment, but I didn't know how much I would actually prefer driving an electric vehicle for all the reasons: the speed, the pickup, the lack of smell. Even when you start your car in the morning, you don't smell that gasoline smell in your garage if the doors are closed or that kind of thing. And you can, and I can sit and idle when I pick people up. I don't have to worry about the Massachusetts anti-idling law.
You never need to get an oil change again. It has very few needed repairs because there's so few moving parts. And in the winter, this is a bonus. You know how a gasoline car relies on the heat of the engine to actually heat up the interior? Well, this doesn't. It heats up within a few seconds. In the same way, when you turn on your toaster, it gets hot almost immediately. You don't have to wait, for a longer process. So, if anything, it's made my life easier.
The Prius is actually interesting because if you use the heater, it typically turns on the gasoline engine to provide the heat. Volt provides it from the battery. You can get quite a lot of heat, however, of it. You can make the cab as warm as you want. They encourage you to use the seat heater and the steering wheel heater because it's more efficient and you have less impact on your electric range. But to be honest, in cold weather, we just turn the heat on and use it, and our range is decreased.
The reliability are super high. You're never going into a gas station. There's no oil changes. There's no servicing. Tires you have to change. Both cars are over 60,000 miles. Neither of them have needed brakes yet, and they probably won't because they use regenerative energy. They capture as opposed to using brakes to slow down. So the brakes don't wear down very much at all.
It's really just tires.
Just tires. Tires are about the only thing you have to do on these cars. There's very low maintenance.
It's a great car to drive, super comfortable, all that sort of thing, as well as the decarbonization aspect, which really was appealing to me. The other nice thing about the Volt is it has a gasoline backup. So once the battery is fully used up, it switches to gasoline driven.
Will you be able to charge it if something happens? Well, living in New England, I can tell you that that is not much of a concern, because I found out there are electric car charging stations all over. The vehicle I purchased gets about 150 miles on a charge. They make another little more expensive version where you get 250 miles on a charge. And I can tell you, for my 36-mile round commute to and from church, that's not a big concern. I can tell you that it is way easier and less time consuming to occasionally plug in my car when I get home than it was to take it to a gas station every week, and spend, my goodness, 30, 35 bucks each week on gas. So that was not a concern at all.
This used plug-in hybrid car was affordable for me. Mostly these days I'm driving around locally, so I don't need a huge long range. And but I wanted the backup just in case. So anyway, that's why I went with that kind of car. Now, when I ever decide to get a different car, it will be all electric.
Once you've used up the miles on the charge, it goes to the standard Prius hybrid technology. So I basically hardly ever have to buy gas for the Prius Prime, except for when we go on long trips.
Yeah, the Prius Prime is actually a Prius with just an extra battery and a charging circuit. And once the battery is discharged, you still get 50 miles a gallon. So it's a very, very efficient car. On the Volt, it's a slightly different drivetrain, but the same basic behavior. It's got a gasoline engine in it that can keep you driving beyond the range of the battery. The Volt only gets 40 miles per gallon. The Prime gets 50, so we typically use the Prius Prime on our longer trips. It is a plug-in hybrid, so when the battery runs down, then you run on gasoline. And so there is no range problem outside of that of a normal car.
What they call range anxiety, and it does exist. You kind of have to think of it like a gas car that only goes to half tank. I've taken it skiing a few times where you have to plan to, you can make it there, but on the way back, you have to stop at a charging station. And there are many, Tesla has many supercharging stations along highways, pretty much throughout the country and the world, actually, to charge from maybe 10% up to 90% of a charge, which would be maybe adding 220 or 230 miles. That takes 30 to 45 minutes. So at a supercharging station. So you have to plan a meal or a cup of coffee or something. But Toyota RAV4, electric RAV4 that Kirsten drives, that one only goes about 100 miles or so, and even
in the summer and less in the winter. The cold really affects the batteries. I can go into Boston and back, and sort of do almost anything I want to do in a normal day, just not like road trip.
Right. When I bought the car, it claimed 270 miles. It really only went about 250 or 255, and now we've owned it 4 or 5 years, and it's down to maybe 240 miles in the summer and 200 miles in the winter. It does start to get shorter. The batteries do degrade over time.
$2 or so for a charge on my car, a little over $1 for a charge on Margaret's. That's the kind of thing. Gasoline's cheaper, maintenance cheaper, and the car was cheaper to buy originally. And because we went with the plug-in hybrid, the extended range hybrids, long trips aren't a problem. We just use gas, and the rest of the time we're on electricity.
And because my car is an older Tesla, it's a Model S, but it's an older Model S. It came grandfathered in with charging for life. So we don't pay for charging. I mean, it's free from Tesla. And then the charging we do at home is fully from solar panels. So we don't pay for that either. So neither car has any cost to use for locomotion.
There's electric charging stations near the church. There's every Nissan dealership actually has free charging for their customers. So I stopped in Dedham and did a quick charge for 5 minutes, and it was plenty to get me back home. part of the infrastructure bill that did pass, that is law, there is a lot of money in there for charging stations. Right now, you find them typically at shopping centers, which works well because through the fast chargers, it takes 30, 45 minutes to get a full charge. So perfect. Stop at the mall, you plug it in, you do your thing, you come back. It's nothing at all.
It just uses regular household current. You know, I don't have a quick special charging station at my home. I just plug it into a regular electrical outlet. And it takes a while to recharge, but that's overnight. So, you know, no big deal.
The first thing you need to know about charging an electric vehicle is that there's 3 types of charging. There's level 1, which is by far the slowest, and that is, just an extension cord from a regular plug on your wall that can go out to your car. The one that most folks put on their house is a level 2 charger, and the Nissan Leaf comes with its own plug, a 10-foot long cable that you plug into the car. I live in a shared house, so I don't have a garage. So what I did was I hired an electrician to put a 240 volt outlet on the outside of my house. So he just ran a wire from the circuit breaker to the outside to this 240 volt plug. It's the same kind of plug you would use for a clothes dryer. And then you plug it in, and then, 6-8 hours later, it's fully charged. So if I'm low, when I get home in the evening, I just plug it in and forget about it. The Nissan Leaf at least has an auto shut-off, so it's not going to hurt the battery if you leave it plugged in beyond when it's fully charged. Then the other type of charging is level 3, which is what you'll find at commercial stations. And that you can charge a car in about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Nissan dealerships actually will let you charge your Nissan for free there. But a lot of those stations are paid. And as far as cost, to hire the electrician and put the box on the outside of my house, that costs about $850. And it costs about $3 worth of electricity every time you charge it.
The charger was purchased. It's a Leviton, which is a pretty big name in chargers. It was purchased from eBay.
It's inside our garage.
It's
We
in our
installed it.
garage, and we paid a professional electrician to come in and install it while we were doing other electrical work anyway. So the incremental cost was not huge. I think I've heard other people get quotes as low as $800 and as much as $4,000. I think our incremental cost was $500 to have them pull the wire to install that. Again, we purchased the unit ourselves.
Do you recall how much the unit was?
The unit was about $300.
This is the most important car that Nissan makes. Why? Because it's affordable. Because that is what we need moving forward. We need electric cars not to be for the rich. We need them for everybody. So,
Do I feel like I'm making a difference to the carbon load in the whole world? I sure hope so. We got to do something.
Basically, the project began 4 or so years ago when we finally decided to try to get air conditioning in the house after all these many years. And because we have forced hot water heating, we don't have duct work for putting in air conditioning. So we talked to Mass Save.
You have 2 problems. One is to get heat distribution around the first floor, and you can either do that with multiple units or by ductwork. Ductwork's annoying. That was the whole reason for these pumps, is small ductwork. The second is you don't use heat in all of the locations all the time. So this way we can only heat the areas that really need heat, or for that matter in the summer, air condition the areas that really need air conditioning. So the living room tends to float up and down in temperature a lot more than the rest of the house, and the dining room has its own heater or our own heat pump, but We only use that if we just need an extra bit. So it made the installation easier, but it also allows us to only provide cooling or heating in the areas we need it.
What started it is my furnace needed $900 to repair it. So that started my long story of looking into heat pumps and whatever. And I've learned a lot. I still have a lot more to go, but I started with my heating company, they're the people that I've had them before servicing. They came out and we discussed it and what we're going to do. And then I had Mass Save came out. I needed a new furnace. My other one was old. It wasn't worth putting $900 into it. And so I got a new furnace, but I still got the one that I got the okay from Mass Save, because I do get a rebate on that. It's not a tremendous amount, but it certainly helped. And of course, on heat pumps, you do also.
There are two kinds of heat pumps. And when we talk about heat pump for most homes, we're talking about an air source heat pump. So that's what I have, an air source heat pump. And it's a unit up on the wall and up high on the wall inside. And then there's a unit outside that sounds and looks like an air conditioner kind of thing. And it is, because when during hot weather, it's used as an air conditioner, cooler. And during cold weather, it's a heater. And that kind of thing is called a mini split. And usually that supplies heat for one level of a building. And that heats up a part of our house that's kind of an extension where the heat would not, it helps the rest of the house, but it's not enough for the whole 2-story house. So that mini split has been really good. And then I also decided to get, since we already had air conditioning put in a number of years ago for the two-floor part of our house, decided to get that converted to what's called a heat pump again. And it also has the coolant system and the heating part, but it works in a different way than a mini split. And don't ask me to explain it. Inside unit is up in the attic, and then there's an outside part also. And again, it looks like a lot of house air conditioners look like on the outside, but it can do heating as well. And that's new for me, and I'm still getting used to that. That works best, it seems like, during spring and fall when it's cold enough outside where you need some kind of heat inside. It is not enough to cover very cold days, and I still need to rely on our gas-powered burner for that.
We have ended up using the heat pumps for all but the coldest part of the winter, like the last several days, basically, when we turn on the gas heat. But the heat pump is very efficient for heating and for cooling, and it has worked great. It's not inexpensive, or at least the system we got wasn't inexpensive, but we have certainly saved money and saved carbon footprint in terms of the reduction in gas heating use.
New England, especially when it's very, very cold, they use a furnace as auxiliary heat for the heat pumps, because the heat pumps in my situation don't do that well in the really cold weather. So that's why they have to have a running furnace to do it.
It's changed life significantly, especially in the summer, being able to have air conditioning. I mean, we don't run air conditioning all summer, but those several days or weeks in the summer, being able to have a comfortable temperature in the house makes my life a lot more pleasant, to say the least.
And I will say, for heating, the heat pump heat is more pleasant than the baseboard heat. It gives a more even heat over the room than the baseboard does. So in fact, I like to sometimes, even if we're using baseboard heat, I'll top it off a little bit with the heat pump, because it just makes the rest of the room just a little bit more toasty warm.
We had the first of 3 insulation projects. We had some insulation blown in at first. The following year, we followed up with having some foam insulation in the same attic. You know, we have 2 attics. And eventually, we also had Mass Save over, and they added some insulation to the other attic. They insulated the garage roof and the side where it adjoins the living space. So everything is much warmer as a result of that. Then we started replacing windows. We had old leaky windows, and now we have wonderful energy efficient windows and skylights.
So I feel very good about it, even though initially it's going to cost me more money, but in the long run, it won't. Someone said, yes, but Eve, just remember, when your house does go up, you want to sell your house, or when it has to go up for sale, that is a plus. And to me, it's a big plus.
Bills are significantly lower, and yeah, and you know, when it got very cold, when did the big cold start? A week and a half ago or whenever, when it's well below freezing outside and stays like that, and windy, because we've had a couple of big windstorms, then the heat pump really has a hard time keeping up. And so we did switch over to the gas heat then. But on more regular winter days like today, you know, the heat pump is terrific. Makes it very comfortable.
Why have the heat pump installed? Because of this now the importance of reducing and hopefully getting completely away from fossil fuels that emit the climate damaging greenhouse gases, whatever we can do. I think I truly, truly believe that. So I am doing what I can possibly do. Overall, probably it's going to save money over, you know, people talk about the payback, but that wasn't my main motivation. Actually, it was the awareness of what needs to be done about climate change.